Hi everyone, it's Nick from Bright Ideas Agency here. So one of the biggest benefits of low-code, maker-led business application development is the agility it offers versus more traditional approaches. However, a lot of the examples that we see highlighted in videos like this one don't really do enough to surface these quick and easy minimum viable product approaches that are designed to boost your individual productivity rather than being tools entire teams rely on. With minimal effort in learning any new skills, you can quickly flex to short-term changes in your process needs or the specific requirements of this week's project, creating tools that help you work efficiently, but without a lot of the extra concerns that might be associated with building something for the longer term that's deeply critical to your business. So in this video, I'm going to give you an example of this. I'm going to build a simple contact tracking system where I have a list of contacts and then I can track my communication with them to manage that better. Say, for a situation where there's a special project or a promotion and you want to hand a list of contacts to someone and you want them to do some kind of follow-up communication. This is a situation that I've seen play out in many offices that I've worked in. And often what results is a crumpled sheet of paper at the end of it with your list of contacts. And it's just about clear that the result you wanted was eventually achieved. But with Power Platform, we can do better. But more importantly, we can do better simply. We can invest a reasonable amount of time in a tool that's going to bring benefit to this specific project, the one sitting right in front of us. Now, obviously, in many businesses, we're going to have some kind of CRM system in place that easily lets us do this kind of work. But the point of this video is that in any business, there are gaps between your existing systems and processes that for certain projects or certain types of work create this laborious administrative busy work. So Power Platform shouldn't just be a tool for those big and complicated long-term systems, but it should be a set of tools that you're accessing every day to best meet the challenges of the workday in front of you and to cut down those situations where you're doing administrative work just for the sake of completing something as opposed to something where your time and energy truly adds value. So let's jump over to this user. We're just in Excel Online here in Miriam's account. And I've already created an Excel spreadsheet with a few contacts over in Miriam's OneDrive. You can see here I've just got 3 contacts in here with a company name, a contact name, and an email address. So obviously, for this to be an efficient use of time, you would have a contact list that's much longer than this. But this is where we're going to start just for this development purpose. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn this spreadsheet into a Microsoft list. So I'm going to open up lists. I'm going to create a new list from Excel. I'm going to select my contact list that's in my OneDrive. I'm going to click Next. And the key thing to remember when creating a Microsoft list from Excel is that you need to have your data in a table. So I already had this in a table, so no need to worry about that. But you get to select your different tables here. And then you can select the type of data that you've got in your columns. And then once you've done that, you can say Next and Create. And here we go, we've got our list. And so I'm just going to add a simple column here, which is going to be a date. And I'm going to call this last communication. And it's going to be a date and time. I'm not going to include the time, but it can be friendly format. And save. And I'm going to add another, which is a single line of text. And I'm going to say direction. And then I'm going to just save that. And there we go, I've got my list set up. So what I want to do is create flows so that when I send an email, if I send it to someone on this list, it records a last communication and it sets the direction to out. And if I receive an email and it's from someone on this list, it sets the last communication as the date that I received the email and sets the direction as in. And you could add whatever columns you wanted and add whatever information you wanted. So in order to do this, what I'm going to do is create a couple of Power Automate flows. So to do this, I'm going to jump over to Power Automate. And the first thing I'm going to do, because I have to understand the column structure in my Microsoft list, I'm going to create a instant cloud flow. I'm going to manually trigger my flow and then create it. I'm just going to add one new step, and this is going to be my SharePoint connector. Now, remember, a Microsoft list is just a SharePoint list. So from a Power Automate perspective, we're going to use the SharePoint connector for interacting with our list. So I'm going to do a get items action. And you see it's asking for a site address and a list name. Well, if I open this up, I'm not seeing any sites here. And that's because your My Lists that sit inside your OneDrive don't actually appear here because the SharePoint connector isn't looking at your OneDrive. But we can easily get around that by going back to our list, and we're just going to copy the first part of this address before the lists, and that is the address of my OneDrive. So I'm now going to jump back into Power Automate. I'm going to go to Enter Custom Value and then paste in the address that I just copied. And immediately that's going to load and it shows me the contact list for the project. There is an alternative way you could do this. You could do a get Microsoft 365 users action and then use the My Site data that comes from that action to populate that site address. But for this purpose, this works perfectly fine. And I'm not going to do anything else. I'm just going to save that and I'm going to run it. And the reason I want to test this and see what the output is I want to understand exactly when I created this, what did these columns get called? Because in order to be able to filter on these columns, I need to know what they got called. So let's jump back here. We're going to test this, test manually. I'm going to run it. It's going to want to sign in, and then we just run the flow. And assuming we've set this all up correctly, there we go, it's run. And for some reason, we usually see outputs here. For some reason, that doesn't seem to be working right now. So I'm going to have to click this click to download, and you can see we get all of this information, which is rather unhelpful. All we're seeing here is the response that we're getting from the server and a whole bunch of JSON or JavaScript object notation. And you can see that what we've got here, if we look for some of the email addresses, so you can see, here we go, one of the email addresses that we've got in our list. And you can see the field name before it. So fields are separated with a colon in JSON. So you're going to have field name, colon, data, and then a comma for the next piece of data is field 2. So I just need to remember that field 2, importantly with a lowercase f, is the name of the column that contains the emails, because those emails are going to be what I need to filter on. So let's jump back over to here. We're going to go back into my flows, and now we're going to create a new flow, and this is going to be an automated cloud flow. And we're going to call this contact list when email arrives. So this is going to be for when an email arrives, and we're going to use our Outlook connector, and we're going to use the when new email arrives trigger and create. So the when email arrives trigger gives you the option of which folder you want to look in, and for our purposes we're going to use inbox. And the next thing that we're going to want to do is to grab the items from our list where the email address is associated with the email of this person sending the email address of the person sending the email. So to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to come down to here and create a SharePoint action. We're going to create a get items, and it has to be get items, not get item, because the get item action requires that you already know the ID of the item that you're looking for. And as we don't know the ID of the item that we're looking for, we have to get all of the items that would match. So again, site address, we're going to enter a custom value and we're going to input that we copied. We're going to select our list and then we're going to say show advanced options. And what we want to do is do a filter query. And the way we do this is by using an OData query. So we're going to put in our field name, which is field underscore 2, and then we want an equals. But for an OData query, that equals is just going to be an EQ. Then we want to open inverted commas and to take the from dynamic content, the address from our email that just arrived. So we're going to put that in there, and we're going to close those inverted commas, and we're just going to save this. And so what that's going to do is when we receive an email, if that email address is from the from email address here, then we're going to retrieve the corresponding data from our SharePoint list. However, because we're using get items, that is always going to be returned as an array. An array is a grouping of data. It can have 0 items, it can have 1 item, it can have many items in it. They'll be called members. So we want to make sure that our get items action returns at least 1 member back to us in that array, because that will tell us that it's found someone. Because remember, an email could come from anyone. They're not necessarily on the list. We want to make sure they are on the list before we proceed forward. So the way that we do that is by making sure that our array that gets returned to us has at least 1 member. So to do that, what we're going to do is add an action, and this action is going to be a condition. And we are going to look for a situation where the number of members being returned for this get items is greater than 0. The way we do that is we create an expression, and the expression we want to use is length. So we measure the length of an array, not a count of the array, but the length of the array. And then we're just going to jump back into dynamic content, and we're going to grab the value or the array of items from our get items. So we can click OK. So on one side of our equation, we have the number of items coming from here. We want is greater than 0. And then we only want to proceed if the length is greater than 0, because that will indicate to us that the email address of the sender has been matched to an email address on our list. Now, we know that there's only going to be 1 person on the list per email address, but Power Automate doesn't necessarily know that. So let's see what happens next. So we're going to say if we get some data back, if we get a match, then we want to update that item. So we're going to go update item, and we're going to paste in our site address again. And then we have to put in the list name, and then we're going to put in the ID. And we've already got the ID from get items. But as soon as we do this, you see what happens here is this gets put within and applied to each. Well, why does that happen? Well, it's because the output of our get items is an array. And it doesn't matter whether it's a 0-member array, a 1-member array, or a 50-member array. At this point, Power Automate doesn't know how many items it's going to get back. So in order to have an update item action that is applying to an ID, it needs to take into account that there may be 1 ID, there may be 20 IDs, there may be 500 IDs that we need to worry about. So while it is possible for us to select a single ID if we want to, in this case, this is only going to run once, so we don't need to worry about that. But just be aware that this is going to happen. If you create something like this, you're going to get this applied to each. And you don't really need to worry about it in this kind of situation. There are ways to avoid getting it, but for something straightforward like this, it doesn't matter that this has been put within and applied to each, even though you know this is only going to be run once. So the next thing we're going to do is we're just going to populate the information that we already returned. So we've got all this stuff here. And then what is the last communication going to be? Well, the last communication is going to be now. We're processing this now, so this is when the last communication has happened. So to do that, we're going to go to expression, and we're going to put in UTC now, and we're going to say OK. And that's just going to create our current time and date is going to be when that gets put in there, and then we're going to just put in as our direction. So let's save this. There we go, that's saved. So let's test this. So here's the inbox of Megan, who, if we recall, is on our list. So we are going to create a new email, and we're going to create that email to Miriam, who has created this automation. We're just going to say test email, test, and we're going to send that. And with the wonders of video, that has just happened almost instantaneously. It has succeeded. So let's jump back to our contact list. We're just going to update this. And you can see that we have an email from Megan today. So that's perfect. That's worked exactly as we want. So now we want to do it the other way around. We want a situation where if we send an email, it's going to update the last communication and it's going to set this direction to out. So how are we going to do that? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this contact list when email arrives flow, and I'm going to save it as contact list when email is sent. And all this is going to do is create a copy of this flow for me. I know that this flow works, so I'm just going to modify the existing flow to make it work the other way around. So save that. And then if we jump back into my flows, you can see this is here, but it's turned off. Now, by default, when you copy a flow, it's always going to be turned off, as Power Automate doesn't want you to have two flows that are doing the same thing, both running at the same time. So let's jump into this, and right now we can turn this on because this is a test environment. We know that we're not going to be receiving lots of additional emails, but in your situation, you probably want to make the edits and then turn it on. So let's turn that on, and then we're going to edit it. Now, when a new email arrives, now I said this is an email that we're sending, but there isn't a trigger for when an email is sent. But we can change the folder. So what we're going to do is we're going to change this inbox to sent items. And what that's going to do is when a new email hits your sent items folder, this is going to trigger. So really, this trigger is not when a new email arrives in my Exchange account. This is when a new email arrives in a particular folder. Then we want to do the same thing as we did previously, except instead of from, this is going to be to. So let's go ahead and put the cursor where we need it, and we're going to change that to 2. And we're going to open this condition. Is this going to be right? So yes, that check is still going to be exactly the same. Then we're still going to apply to each item. The last communication is still going to be UTC now, but the direction is going to be out. So we can, we've updated all of that. We're going to save it. So let's jump into my email. And I'm going to send another email to someone else who's on the list. So Adele is also on this list. I'm just going to send a test email. Test. And I'm going to click send. And I'm going to jump back into my flow, and I'm going to step out of this and wait for this to run. Okay, so here we go. This has succeeded. So let's jump back over to our list. And you can see immediately that Adele has a last communication today with a direction of out. So you could really do anything you wanted with this. So you could add any columns, any follow-up, any data like that you could add in there. There are a couple of things that you might want to think about if you're using a list like this. Now, the first one is if we open up this form, you can see we have a form here where we can edit all of this information. But there are other opportunities here in terms of what you could do. One of them is that you can customize with Power Apps. So let's just take a look at a little customization that we might want to do. So here we are in Power Apps, and I'm just thinking that it would be really cool if we could see the emails that have been sent and received directly from our list. So let's think about how we would do that. So I have a container here that has my SharePoint form in it. I'm just going to modify this slightly. And I'm going to create a button. Oh, no, that's not what I wanted. I'm going to create a button that's going to go at the top here. And I'm going to modify the text of this so that it says see emails. And I'm going to now create a new screen, a new blank screen. And in this screen, I'm going to insert a gallery. I'm just going to come down here and I'm going to add some data. So I'm going to add data from a connector. I'm going to use the Office 365 Outlook connector. Add this connection. And I'm going to come back to my gallery, click on my gallery, and I'm going to change the items that are in my gallery. And I'm going to say that we're going to use the Outlook 365 Outlook connector. And you can see that it tells me how to search for emails. So I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to edit this JSON, and I'm going to put in here search query, if I can spell it correctly. And then what I want to search for is the email address of the user that sent me the user that we're looking at. So the way that I can do that is by coming back to my first form screen and looking at this field here and seeing that I have this text box which is data card value 2. So let's come back to my gallery and I'm going to say that I want to use data card value 3 dot text as my search query. And I'm going to come into my field here and I'm going to change the layout a little. I want a title, a subtitle, and a body. And I'm going to edit my fields. So what I want to do is my title is going to be my subject, I guess. My subtitle is going to be my date and time received, and my body is going to be my body preview. And I am just going to save this. You know what? I'm going to come back to my button and I'm going to create an on select. And I'm going to change this to navigate screen 1. So this doesn't do a lot right now, but we're just going to save this and we're just going to push this over to SharePoint so that you can see how this works. So I'm going to publish to SharePoint, and now this is published. And we're just going to wait a minute for this to publish over to our list. So let's go back to SharePoint. Okay, so we've now just waited a minute, and I'm going to open up this Megan B record because that is the one that sent an email to us. I'm going to open this up, and I'm going to go to see emails. And you can see here that I have the various emails. This is from my testing for this video yesterday. This is from my testing today, are here, just with the test. So let's go ahead and just clean this up a little. So I'm going to head over back to Power Apps. And come back to my screen that I just created. My gallery. So let's move this gallery down a little, and we're going to make it a bit smaller. I'm going to come up here. I'm going to copy my button from here, and I'm going to paste it into my second screen. And then I'm just going to change this to navigate back to form screen 1. And I'm going to change the text to back to form. And then let's just insert a text label above this gallery. Change the text to inbound emails. Or maybe I can change the text, in fact, to last inbound email. And then I'm going to go to this gallery. I'm going to take a look at this these options again. So you can see that one of the options that I've got here is top. So I'm going to use that, and I'm going to say top 1, so that I'm only actually pulling the last email out of my inbox. Then I'm going to grab all of this, copy it, and I want to paste this. Let's grab this and pull it down here. So now I'm going to do exactly the same thing, but I'm going to have my last outbound email. Okay, so we're just going to modify this gallery to show us our outbound emails. So the search query will still be the same. We'll still want the top 1. Let's change the folder. So we're going to put in folder path is sent items. And the last thing is, by default, this searches for emails that are unread. So we're going to add fetch only unread false. I didn't spell false correctly. And we're going to add that to both of our galleries, because we want to see all the emails, not just the unread ones. Okay, so that should be everything that we need to make this work. Let's save this. I'm going to publish it back to SharePoint. Okay, so we'll take a look at our account with an outbound email. There we go. Our account with an inbound email. There we go. And let's just jump into our email. And we're going to send Megan a response. Let's send that. Jump back to our list. And our list is updated to show that we've sent an email to Megan. Let's take a look at our forms. And we now have an email here and an email here. And obviously we can modify the view of these a little if we want to be able to see everything. But you have a nice, neat system for being able to keep track of your correspondence. Maybe if you're handing a list of contacts over to an administrator or an intern in your office for a particular project, something like this can be set up in 20 or 30 minutes and can help you manage your communication with hundreds of contacts on a list. So some of you may find building a tool exactly like this useful. But for the rest of you, hopefully beyond that, just watching this has offered some inspiration for how with fairly simple interventions with Power Automate or other tools in Power Platform, you can cut minutes or hours off of processes that otherwise you would be completing manually or at least semi-manually, because they fall in gaps between your existing business systems that you've got. If you're looking for help with this type of thing, then a great place to start is Microsoft's Learning Portal. They have step-by-step instruction on how to start building simple apps. And I would say in just a couple of hours to maybe a morning or afternoon, anyone who is decently familiar with using Excel could be in a position to start building simple automations or apps to use as their own tools for their processes. But beyond that, if you're looking for help with setting up a strategy for how you can roll out tools like this in your company, then consulting businesses like mine are a great option. And if you need help with that kind of thing, with setting up a strategy, with just working out how you can start to roll out tools like this in your business, then please do get in touch. I hope this video has been useful to you. If it has been, then please give it a like. And if you'd like to see more content like this, then please subscribe to the channel. Until next time, bye bye.